The final thing is monitoring, and this is the process that lasts a long time. Basically, it starts January 1 when you get your funding and goes through the following December 31st. Because there is a time lag, we're probably going to be talking about December 2008 financial information into March after we've produced audited financial statements. So as you all know, dealing with your vendors and dealing with finance, you know that there's a lag as to when you guys get service and when we actually pay for it. Most of our vendors are running on 2 weeks. There are some vendors that are guilty of running on 2 months. So it takes us a while to get that information and try and get it in the proper period. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that affects the monthly reports you guys will be working with as we go on. So the other thing that we need to do with monitoring is you guys need to understand what your budget is and then make sure that you stay within those spending limits. We're going to produce reports for you on a monthly basis that shows how you're doing month by month and also year to date. And we do have some flexibility in those reports, so if that information doesn't suffice how you want to manage or how your supervisor wants to manage the budget, we can help you out and produce different reports as we go through that. So one of the things that I want to stress today is it seems like we, in some areas, have 2 sets of records. We have records that you guys are keeping on a daily basis, and then we have the financial records that finance deals with and enters into Mass 90. If we ever get into any disputes, we need to be clear that the records that finance is keeping are the legal records. So those are the records that are being audited and the records that we have to rely on. Hopefully we can get to a point where we can reconcile the two and you guys can have enough understanding and I guess belief in what we're producing that you guys don't have to do a separate set of accounting records yourself. We're both on the same page and you can rely on what we're producing for you. So as we go through this monitoring, there's another key thing that you guys need to be aware of. 3 times a year, supervisors are going to meet with the directors and discuss their budget. They're going to look at variances, both positive and negative, and explain, this is why this variance is appearing in my budget reports. It could be as simple as, well, when Jeff was creating the financial reports, he took our annual budget and divided it into 12 equal installments. Well, we don't pay for this event. We spend 50% of our money in June. So it makes perfect sense to me that we didn't spend any money in January through March because I'm planning to spend it all in June. And the financial reports just didn't reflect that. It could be that we planned to do something and we didn't get it accomplished. Again, there's probably a purpose why we didn't do it. That's what these 3 meetings are going to be to do, is to talk about positive and negative variances that appear in the budget. And they will be both on the revenue side and on the expenditure side. Budget adherence. There's a couple things that you need to know as we go through our budget. We have actually 2 funds or 2 separate sets of records. One is the general fund, which basically encompasses all of our daily activities. The other is the capital project fund, and that specifically tracks 3 projects for 2009. The first would be one that we're nearing completion, and that would be the Eloise May Library. So that is accounted for separately in the capital project fund. So is the streets at South Glen. And the final thing is the bookmobile. So costs that are associated with those 3 projects and building or construction to get those facilities or equipment in use are going to be recorded in the capital project fund. Everything else is going to be recorded in the general fund. And I'll show you how that kind of makes sense as we look at some of your reports. The next thing is each individual has a set budget, and they're the only ones that are able to spend that budget. So as we go through the budget manual, I'll identify some areas as to who has responsibility for what dollar amounts and how that plays out. but no longer can you spend money from anyone else's budget. You only can spend in what you're being held accountable for. The next thing is we need to be conscious of what's going on with our budget, because it's going to affect performance evaluations, and it could have an effect on future budgets. So if you request a lot of money and you can't spend it, and you're a repeat offender, then next year when the directors are looking at your budget request, they're going to say, okay, we understand that you want $1 million, but you've always wanted $1 million and you only spent $700,000, so we're going to give you $700,000. Or consequently, they could say, we gave you $1 million, you spent $1.5 million. That $500,000 you weren't supposed to spend, so next year's budget is going to be cut because you overspent. So there are going to be some consequences if you don't stay within your budget, and you can't discuss as to why that variance occurred. Let's talk a little bit about the roles. I would consider you guys end users, and you're going to be value to your managers and directors in understanding the process and making sure that the reports make sense. So kind of what your role is, you guys handle some of the purchasing requirements for your department on a regular basis. Basically what that is a delegation of task. It's not a delegation of authority. So you guys don't have the ability to go out and spend money on behalf of the district without prior approval from your direct supervisors. The only people that can actually spend the money are the 13 decision makers that have been given budget authority. They can delegate tasks and have you guys help. You just need to make sure that you're getting prior authorization to making those purchases. The managers and directors, they're the ones that have the budget authority. They can spend up to $5,000 following both the purchasing policy and the budget policy to purchase things that are within their budgets, within the strategic plan to accomplish their daily operations. The finance department isn't decision makers in this, they just facilitate the process. So we take the information that you provide us and we communicate that through reports to the directors. The directors are the ones that make the final budget decision, and then they take that to the board of directors for formal approval. So if you submit something and it gets cut, that's not a finance decision, that's a director's decision. So if you have questions, finance will try and facilitate that, but the director that you report to should have a good understanding as to why something made it into the budget or didn't make it into the budget. And if you want to spend money in a different direction, you should talk with them saying, I plan to do A. As soon as we got into the new year, A wasn't a good option anymore. Can I spend it on B? You can ask that question to your director. They'll make a presentation to the other directors saying, I think this is the direction we need to head. It's either going to be done with the same amount of money, or maybe you might have to ask for additional money, but you should be able to justify why that's the proper direction to take. And like I said, board of directors, again, they just have statutory requirements. They give general guidelines to the directors as to where they would like to see the district move. One of the directions that they gave this year is, hey, guess what, guys? The economy is not in very good shape. We need to be more conservative than we have in the past. We want to have a balanced budget. So that was the message they gave to us. The directors worked on balancing that budget by making budget cuts that they thought would get us to that position and were best for the district.